Do you want to watch more devs?
More than anything, I was afraid to ask.
Forrest is an absolute moron.
Did you see?
Yes.
Lily Chan is an absolute moron.
Did you see?
Yes.
Everyone is an absolute moron.
Oh
Do you
my
see?
god.
Alex Garland doesn't understand quantum mechanics. He doesn't understand cause and effect. He doesn't understand human fucking beings.
Did you see?
God, I'm so bored! Somebody help me!
Episode 4 begins with yet another mood piece, another series of cool visuals with no context, but at least this one actually leads into something, specifically an earthquake.
Got a tremor outside.
Anyone explain to me why we built this lab on a historically established tectonic fault line?
Scary shit. Guess we're good.
The two DEVS employees that act the most like real human beings are unnerved by it. But Katie, who acts like a more self-righteous and condescending version of Data from Star Trek, isn't fazed in the slightest.
Katie wasn't scared, though. You know why she's not scared that the big quake might come today? Because she already knows it doesn't.
I have a strong understanding of the magnetic field supporting us, our tolerances in an earthquake, and our backup power systems. If you're feeling anxious, I can explain it to you.
It's okay, Katie. I believe you.
Stewart implies she must have looked forward into the future and seen that the big earthquake bound to fuck up California eventually doesn't come today. But she insists that she's not worried because the building is secure. Now, I really doubt this building would survive the big one when it eventually does come, but a real human being, even though they hypothetically knew the exact second a small earthquake would happen, as she likely does, would still tense up a bit and react to it. It would most likely be impossible not to do so instinctively.
Forrest arrives, and Stewart says,
Is it morning already? This place is like Vegas. I never know what time it is.
Yeah, I'm sure that's just great for productivity, designing the building in a way that completely disrupts your employees' sense of time and biological rhythms. Maybe you should have designed your most important and valuable office space for the people that actually work in it, and not the audience watching the show at home.
Anyway, Forrest heads straight to the projection room to watch a projection of what looks like Lily crawling around on the ground.
Meanwhile, Lily wakes up alone in Jamie's bed. She wanders around his apartment, then sits down in a chair opposite Jamie on the couch to stare at him as he sleeps.
Eventually he wakes up, and she thanks him.
Thanks for letting me stay, Jamie.
Oh, come on. You can go back last night.
But still, thanks. And you didn't have to let me take your bed or change the sheets.
But I kinda did need to change the sheets.
This is the first time in 4 episodes that Lily has thanked Jamie for doing anything for her at all.
Thanks.
Back at DEVS, Katie asks if what Forrest is doing is wise.
Is it wise? Or is it helpless?
I don't need a lecture, Katie.
What if someone else had walked in instead of me? If the technicians see you accessing the future, it makes it seem as if the rule is open to being broken.
I'm not sure how a tech would know immediately upon walking in here that Forrest is looking at the future from this blurry, nondescript image, but okay. However, come to think of it, I'm not sure why the employees out there can't see what's going on in here. The logs of what projections are being made or have been made at any time from their computers. Surely they could, right? I mean, I really doubt you'd be able to hide all of that, especially when
They know not to break the rule. And they know we do break the rule.
Well, that's another really stupid line. Forrest, even though he's supposedly the CEO of a tech company and manages a massive team of employees, doesn't seem to understand basic human psychology very well.
So let's explain it for him. You see, Forrest, if the people under you know you break the rules, they would be more likely to break them themselves because you're the leader and you set the example. Idiot.
So Katie asks why Forrest is looking at the future again.
What were you doing? Checking that the tram lines remain intact?
I'm just scared.
Of what?
Everything we do is predicated on the idea that we live in a physical universe, not a magical universe.
Are you doubting that?
Not the physical universe. But I am scared we might be magicians.
Okay, folks, I hope you're ready, because we have now arrived at the beginning of the end, so to speak. This is the point at which the show begins in earnest, its spiral into absolute stupidity.
It's time to address the future.
So Forrest believes, as he stated to Sergei in episode 1, in a purely material universe. He doesn't believe in the supernatural. He believes that nothing happens without a prior cause, and this includes everything from the behavior of particles on the quantum level to the behavior of organic life forms such as human beings and other incredibly complex systems. As such, he does not believe human beings have free will in the traditional sense.
No human ever chose to be born into the genes or environment it was born into. Every decision and choice human beings ever make can be traced back to factors that were outside of their control. Because everything that has happened couldn't have happened any other way, the same is true for the future, and therefore, the future is predetermined. However, he and his team at DEVS have developed a technology that, using insanely advanced quantum computers, and assuming that it actually works as stated, can reliably predict the future.
So the big question is, what does that mean for his tramlines metaphor, that the future is fixed and predetermined?
What if we project 1 minute into the future, right now?
Forrest.
What if, Katie? What if 1 minute into the future we see you fold your arms and you say, fuck the future. I'm a magician. My magic breaks tram lines. I'm not going to fold my arms. You put your hands in your pockets and you keep them there until the clock runs out.
Cause precedes effect. Effect leads to cause. The future is fixed in exactly the same way as the past. The tram lines are real.
Uh-oh, retard alert!
Do you really expect me to believe that upon creating a technology that allows them to see the future, no one involved has ever run the little experiment Forrest just described?
Are you fucking serious? You really expect me to believe that Forrest, genius inventor guy, hasn't already tried that?
That's unbelievable.
All right, let's rewind and unpack what just happened. Forrest described a very interesting and incredibly simple experiment to answer an important question. Does seeing the future allow you to change it? He is clearly concerned with and invested in the answer. But apparently, even though any human being capable of forming this question would have done so immediately, he has yet to run the aforementioned test. What? Or anything like it.
What the fuck?
But as if that wasn't bad enough, when he brings it up, Katie just tells him, we don't need to run the experiment. The tram lines are definitely real, the future is determined and unchangeable, and seeing the future changes nothing. I'm not going to run the experiment to find out because I already know the answer. And the answer is, don't worry about it. Remember how earlier in the show she lamented how religious and illogical human beings are?
It's really hard.
It really shouldn't be.
What are we supposed to do? Unravel a lifetime of moral experience?
Human beings are hardwired, magical thinkers. You could have the most rational person in the world, but if their kid gets hurt, they'll start praying.
Well, now she doesn't give a flying fuck about logic and evidence. She just takes it on faith that their worldview makes sense.
Well, first of all, through God, all things are possible, so jot that down.
Why? Why is she so sure of herself? And why on earth does Forrest just take her at her word and not run the experiment anyway?
He's clearly concerned his worldview might not survive the test, and it would definitely have an impact on his behavior, but apparently, and this is confirmed later in the show, he never runs this test. Never.
So, being able to predict the future has been done in science fiction before, perhaps most famously in Minority Report. In Minority Report, there are oracles who can fairly reliably see the future, and this allows the police to prevent crimes from happening. This raises all sorts of questions about the ethics of arresting people for things they haven't actually done, and it's very interesting.
But the one thing that is made abundantly clear throughout the movie is that knowing the future allows you to change it. Because of course it would. Because Minority Report, unlike DEVS, was written by someone who understands human beings. Knowing what happens would absolutely allow you to change it. It's even possible that knowing the future would inevitably cause you to change it.
Having knowledge of what's going to happen, even if somehow it doesn't cause you to make conscious decisions differently, would cause you to react in involuntary, unconscious ways differently.
You can't be genuinely surprised by anything that happens.
Wow.
Even if the future they're projecting at DEVS is one where they've already seen the future and know what's going to happen, knowing what's going to happen even then would still allow them to alter it.
For example, it doesn't matter if, in the future where they see Katie folding her arms, whether that Katie knew or didn't know its own future. It would still allow Katie to thwart the projection by keeping her hands in her pockets. There's no way to avoid this. There's no way to avoid the fact that knowing what's going to happen definitely can, and perhaps inevitably will, change what's going to happen. And this show actually thinks it can hand-wave that problem away.
So you can follow my train of thought here with my data that I've laid out. Honestly, when you look at it like this, I mean, I don't even need to say anything. It's pretty obvious.
Anyway, the future projection says that Lily will die.
In 48 hours, Lily will die. Effectively. It's already happened.
According to Katie, it's already set in stone, and nothing can happen to change that. She doesn't know that, but she doesn't need to know that. She has faith.
Meanwhile, Lily is talking to Jamie about what their next move should be. Lily is convinced that going to the police wouldn't stop Amaya from killing her, because I guess the police can't protect her from one middle-aged man.
We tell the cops about the doctored film, where to look, what to look for. They do the rest.
I think you need to stop seeing them as a tech company. See them as the mob.
Apparently, Amaya is more like the mob, which doesn't make a lot of sense.
Why am I on there?
But I guess it lends some credence to the idea that they don't actually do anything outside of DEVS and killing people who threaten DEVS.
Jamie rightly suggests that, if necessary, she could go into witness protection.
You feel confident they can protect you.
Yes, with witness protection.
Living in fucking Iowa for the rest of my days?
Wow.
First of all, living in Iowa is probably better than never getting justice for the murder of your boyfriend, but what do I know? Second, if Forrest, Kenton and company are brought to justice and exposed for what they did, you wouldn't need to live in Iowa forever. And third, fuck everyone that lives in Iowa, I guess.
The fuck did I do?
Jamie, just
What?
stop trying to fix this. Stop trying to know what to do. Okay? Neither of us knows what to do.
Apparently, she doesn't want to know or figure out what to do about her potentially life-threatening problems. She just wants him to say, "Yeah, that sucks. I'm sorry. That must be really hard."
She says she's going back home. He offers to come with her, but she shuts him down immediately.
I'm gonna go back home.
What?
They'll be keeping tabs on me. I don't want anything to look wrong.
I'm coming with you.
No.
Yes.
No, I don't want them to know you exist.
That's my problem.
Your problem. More chivalry. You realize this is a step up from changing the sheets.
Fuck, Lily!
She's incredibly rude and condescending to him, considering he's just trying to help, and considering that she's been completely reliant on his help so far.
You know, for 2 years, I've been shadowed by 1,000 things about you. Your face in the morning, stupid jokes we had, names we had for each other, but I just remembered what it was really like going out with you.
I was thinking the same thing, actually.
Jamie remembers that Lily's kind of a bitch, and she remembers that he's a total pushover.
Well, I guess they're both aware of the fact that they have no chemistry together, so that's something. Meanwhile, Kenton goes to Lily's apartment building and he buzzes, but she isn't home.
He finds himself in a conversation with the resident homeless man there, and he asks said homeless man about Lily and gets this response.
Oh, I'm sorry, man. No offense. That's Lily's window right there. Yeah, I think she left you a note.
Filler shot, filler shot, filler shot. Lily arrives back at her apartment to find Kenton waiting for her there.
The homeless man tells Lily that he's got her back if she's got a problem, but she walks over to Kenton willingly. Kenton tells her,
"You remember we had an appointment to see a doctor this morning?"
She tries to weasel out of it, but Kenton correctly points out how serious what she did actually was.
I just know
You had a
that-
panic attack in my office and stepped out onto a third-story window ledge, Lily. I don't blame you for wanting to pretend it didn't happen, but it did. See the doctor and we're done.
It's at this point that it becomes incredibly obvious that her plan the other day was ill-advised, to say the least.
Much like Amaya's plan to make Sergei's death go away with fire, Lily's plan has also failed to make her problems go away. It honestly kind of baffles me that she thought she could have such a dramatic episode in front of them and that would just be the end of it. It's almost like it was really dumb.
So, realizing she can't get out of it, she gets into the car with him and they drive off.
Back at DEVS, the kid makes a discovery of some kind that he's quite happy about. He and Stuart share a celebratory hug.
Meanwhile, Lily has her meeting with the psychiatrist.
He asks her some basic questions that aren't really of much consequence. Then he asks her if there's any history of mental illness in her family.
And she says no. Which might not be the smartest move if you're trying to convince him you suffer from schizophrenia, seeing that schizophrenia is quite often genetic, but okay. Eventually, he asks about the incident.
And if now we were to talk about the specific incident that led you here, the incident at your workplace, how would you describe it?
I can't.
You can't describe it?
I don't remember it.
You remember nothing about it at all?
No. It's a total blank. Like it's erased from my memory. So I can't really tell you anything.
Why are you the way that you are?
Ah, the old I don't remember approach.
Clearly sensing that she's hiding something, he promises her total confidentiality. But before she can answer, we cut to Jamie getting ready to go somewhere. But before he leaves, he realizes he needs to get his shit together. So he cleans his apartment as disco music plays, and we see it play out in all its mundane glory.
Okay. Clean up your room. Your room. Put it in order. Clean up your room. Just make it less hideous and horrible. I've renovated many places now. Jesus, a civilized human being. We live in here. Clean up your room.
Very exciting, Mr. Garland.
However, as soon as he's done cleaning and leaves his apartment, this happens.
I honestly have no idea what the point of that was supposed to be. It's not like he threw a bunch of stuff on that shelf while cleaning and that's why it collapsed.
Was that supposed to be funny? Like, haha, he just cleaned up and now it's a mess again. Ironic.
Anyway, back at DEVS, the kid shares his discovery with the rest of the team. There's a lot of quantum physics jargon in this scene, so we're going to go through it nice and slow.
He explains that the DEVS system currently uses an interpretation of the famous double slit experiment in quantum mechanics called
De Broglie bomb,
or the pilot wave theory.
So we're no experts, and any experts watching, please feel free to correct any mistakes we make here in the comments, but let's try to go through the basics.
The double slit experiment shows that when you shoot light, using a laser for example, through a sheet with two parallel slits in it onto a solid sheet, an interference pattern emerges on the latter sheet that indicates that the light behaves like two waves going through both slits interacting with each other. The light is brighter in certain spots where two waves amplify each other and darker where they cancel each other out, which is not what you would expect if light consisted entirely of individual particles.
However, if you place receptors on the latter sheet to detect the light when it hits it, you get individual particles of light. It seems as if light is simultaneously a wave and a particle. Weird, right? Furthermore, when you try to detect with instruments which slit the particles went through, the result changes, and the wave-like interference pattern no longer appears.
Bizarrely, it seems as if the act of measuring and observing has somehow changed the result.
No fair! You change the outcome by measuring it!
Explaining how these results are possible in a way that makes coherent sense is the central mystery to be solved in quantum mechanics, and there are many interpretations that attempt to do so. For our purposes, we're only going to talk about the 3 interpretations that are relevant to the show, which are the Copenhagen interpretation, the pilot wave theory, and the many worlds theory.
The Copenhagen interpretation of the double slit experiment, though largely ignored by DEVS, is the most popular and widely taught. It goes something like this. Essentially, the light goes through both slits simultaneously like a wave until it's observed, at which point the wave function collapses and the light behaves as particles going through one slit or the other.
Under this interpretation, the particles exist in what's called a superposition, in that they go through both slits simultaneously, until of course they are observed. This theory really clashes with classical physics and our basic understanding of the world, especially the idea of something being in 2 states at once. Personally, I have never liked this interpretation because of how counterintuitive it is and how contradictory it seems, but for all I know, it could well be true. Also, importantly for us, this interpretation is non-deterministic because of how inherently subjective the idea of an observer affecting the outcome is. Next, we have the pilot wave theory, the interpretation that, as the kid mentions here, DEVS is currently using. Unlike the Copenhagen interpretation, the pilot wave theory posits that individual particles of light only ever go through one slit or the other, not both simultaneously. Under this interpretation, the particles of light always actually exist in space, even when unobserved. What causes the wave-like interference pattern is that they are acted upon by a wave function, and something called the guiding equation, whatever that means. The apparent randomness of the particle's behavior is the result of a host of hidden and unknowable variables, such as the initial position and spin of each particle. This theory insists that the wave-like interference pattern collapses when trying to detect which slit a particle went through, not because light exists in a superposition until you look at it, but because the detectors themselves must be affecting the movement of the particles.
It is not without its own conundrums, for instance that it apparently conflicts with the idea that causal influences can't move faster than the speed of light, but nonetheless, this is probably the simplest of all the interpretations of quantum physics, in that it involves the least amount of head-scratching contradictions.
It fits more neatly within classical physics in that the particles are never in 2 places at once, and also this theory is perfectly deterministic, which our boy Forrest here likes.
The behavior of the electrons isn't based on something as subjective as whether or not you're watching. If you have all the necessary data, you could predict the behavior of the particles 100% of the time, regardless of whether anyone was looking or not.
And lastly, we have the many worlds interpretation.
Every possible quantum event is realized in its own distinct world or universe. When we observe the particles in the double slit experiment and see that they only went through one slit, we are only seeing the version of the universe where it went through that slit. Somewhere there is a version of the universe in which the particle went through the other slit.
In essence, every possible quantum event that can happen will happen. As a result, there are infinite universes with infinite variations.
This is a very intriguing concept for sci-fi writers because then we can explore a universe where your life turned out very differently, or you can watch really wacky TV shows from other universes. It's a fun premise, for sure, and like the others, it does make sense of the results of the double slit experiment, but it also raises infinitely more questions. This theory is also deterministic in that it doesn't involve the subjectivity of an observer changing the result.
Okay, I know that was a lot, but let's summarize what we just learned, and to do that, we're going to use the famous cat in Schrödinger's metaphor for quantum mechanics.
Simply put, in his thought experiment, you put a cat in a box with a complex device that after an hour has an exactly 50% likelihood of having poisoned the cat. According to the Copenhagen interpretation, because it's a matter of probability, the cat exists in a superposition of being both alive and dead simultaneously until you open the box and discover which it is.
There's also a lot of drugs in there.
According to the pilot wave interpretation, the cat is either alive or dead, not both, and hypothetically, if you knew everything there was to know about that device in the box, you could potentially predict which state it's in without even opening it. Lastly, according to the many worlds interpretation, there is a universe in which the cat is alive and another universe where the cat is dead.
Alright, we now know enough to understand this scene, so let's press on.
We have a prediction system based on ultramassive data. The data goes to a subatomic level, so we're fully in the world of quantum mechanics, using a fully deterministic interpretation for which we use a version of de Broglie, pilot wave. And it works. Kind of.
We glimpsed Christ on the cross.
Exactly. We didn't see him or hear him. We glimpsed him through a blizzard of variances. The boss doesn't like variances.
Okay, so this makes sense, right? They've been using the relevant equations from the pilot wave theory, and they've shown quite a bit of progress. But ultimately, if you're looking at an image through a blur of possible variances, you can't be sure whether what you're seeing is actually what happened, or just what could have happened. In essence, it needs to work with 100% accuracy.
The kid describes how this problem is especially difficult with sound waves, his primary area of focus, because sound waves are especially fragile and hard to predict.
Now, I can absolutely imagine that predicting the ripples in the air of sound waves from 2,000 years ago would be insanely difficult, if not impossible. Among a near infinite amount of other variables, you need to know the behavior of every molecule of air at that exact arbitrary spot. That's a tall order.
However, I'm very confused as to how that's any more or less complicated than the visual side of these projections.
It doesn't make any sense at all to me that predicting a comparably near infinite amount of variables, including the exact behavior of millions of photons at that exact spot, is any less difficult. But I guess visuals are easier than sounds for some reason, sure.
Most of my day I'm hearing shit like this. An elegant, ugly dropout. And it gets worse the further we travel back in time, and the worse is exponential.
This is the second or third time now that they've indicated that going 2,000 years back in time is more difficult than going a few days back in time, which would make sense, but every projection we've seen so far has had the same quality level of sound and visuals, regardless of how far back in time they've gone.
There is definitely not an exponential difference between this scene of Jesus on the cross and this scene of Lily putting the "fuck you" note in her window.
And I'm thinking, fucking de Broglie bomb, fucking pilot wave, fucking hidden variables. I wish I could ditch them all. So I did.
كاريا هي لا لنفسي عظمى لموتى قولي أركض واشعروا عمي.
That's a projection?
Yeah.
It's fucking crystal.
What language is that?
It's Aramaic.
Wow, Forrest really knows his ancient Aramaic, I guess. I wonder when he found time to study dead languages in between moping about his dead daughter and covering up murders.
I switched out de Broglie bomb for the Everett interpretation.
Many worlds.
Still deterministic.
Deterministic because everything that can happen will happen.
And that's as deterministic as you can get.
Anyway, the kids switched out the relevant equations and principles of the pilot wave theory for the relevant equations and principles of the many worlds theory to achieve this massive breakthrough.
But someone isn't too happy about that.
No. It's a waste of time. And it's dangerous.
Why is it dangerous?
Because it's seductive. As I can see from all your faces, lit up, hearing Jesus talk, getting nerd hard-ons. Let's all just be clear. It's not actually Jesus talking, is it?
No, it is Jesus talking.
But not our Jesus from our history. It's a Jesus from a history. And every time you run the system, you'll get a different outcome.
But the difference might be a single hair on Jesus' head.
No. It will be that difference, and 3 hairs difference, and 4. And 1,000, and all points in between and either side.
So Forrest actually makes a good point here. As fascinating as it is to have created a TV into infinite alternate universes, it's irrelevant and not helpful to the supposed goal of this project to be able to see our past and our future in this timeline. If you wanted to know exactly how or why they built the pyramids at Giza, if you want to know exactly what happened to JFK, if you want to know whether or not Jesus actually physically came back from the dead, or if you want to know exactly what's going to happen in 3 days, 3 years, or 3 centuries from now, seeing a projection of an alternate universe is about as relevant as reading alternate history fiction. Especially if it works as he implies that you would get a different universe every time you run the projection. You can't trust that anything you see has relevance to your timeline. The ability to see the past and future and even the present of other universes has its own intriguing possibilities, but they are very different and I would think less practical than the possibilities of being able to see our own past and our own future.
However, instead of calmly explaining to his team why the many worlds theory is of less interest and utility and why they should focus on the pilot wave theory, Forrest turns into a tyrant and tells the kid he's fired. He uses the opportunity to try and make an example of him to intimidate the rest of his team into compliance.
This is my response. You're fired.
What?
You're fired. You've undermined everything I'm trying to do.
Katie.
Forrest.
Shut up, Katie.
Are you kidding me?
I'm not kidding anyone. This is a message to the whole team. If you didn't know it with the Russian kid, you know it now. I will not accept this project being undermined.
Oh, Jesus. Forrest's motivations are very confusing to me.
While he's correct that focusing on our timeline and using the pilot wave theory would bear more fruit, he and his team don't really show interest in answering any of the multitude of important questions about the past that could truly change the world.
It only has to do with getting his daughter back to the degree he can.
With that in mind, it makes some sense that he needs this to be his daughter from his timeline, but you would think that a bereaved parent like him would also be interested in any of the infinite amount of worlds where she was still alive.
Furthermore, it doesn't make any sense to me that he didn't or couldn't explain in a level-headed way to the kid and the rest of the team why focusing on our timeline with the pilot wave theory is more important in a way that they could understand and appreciate.
Unless, of course, what the kid just proved was that the many worlds theory is correct and the pilot wave theory is incorrect.
I don't know. Is that what just happened? The many worlds theory works, right? And the pilot wave theory only kind of works at the moment. What does that mean? Does that mean that infinite alternate universes definitely exist and that this is what one of them sounds like? Or is it all theoretical and this is what an alternate universe would sound like if it hypothetically existed?
Does this mean that the pilot wave theory is bogus, or just that projecting on our specific timeline is more difficult for some reason?
Are the two different theories contradictory and mutually exclusive, or can they both be true?
None of this is made clear. If the kid just proved that the many worlds theory is true and the pilot wave theory is false, then Forrest's overreaction here is akin to putting his fingers in his ears and screaming,
La 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 la, I can't hear you.
But even if both have the potential to work and he simply wants to focus the team's efforts on our timeline instead of alternate timelines, why couldn't he have just convinced them of that instead of being so aggressive and tyrannical about it?
But regardless, the kid is fired and Forrest storms out.
And next we see Lily leaving her meeting with the shrink.
Kenton, rather suspiciously, tells her to wait while he goes in to talk with the shrink, and he closes the door behind him. And of course this is what happens, because the shrink isn't an idiot and he knows what schizophrenia and psychosis look like.
I wouldn't say she's suffering from either schizophrenia or psychosis. And I don't think she ever has.
So she was lying.
Meanwhile, back at DEVS,
I don't know what the fuck just happened.
Yeah, kid, neither do I.
I mean, I just fucking fixed that guy's shit. His shit, I fucking fixed it. And he fires me.
Did you fix it? Is that what happened? Phrasing it like that makes it seem like it didn't work and now it does, but really, you took it in a different direction and now it works entirely differently, right?
Unless the implication is that the original way was broken and wouldn't ever work, and this is the only way it ever will work.
I don't know how you would know that, or how we're expected to know that, but if so, I guess you did fix it. The kid is pretty emotional about all this, and Stewart tries to be stoic, but you can tell he is too.
Lyndon.
What?
Go. You're very young. You're very rich. Go.
I mean, I never see this place again? Do I ever see you again?
And it's weird, I can actually feel a bit of genuine human emotion here, even if what preceded it was a confusing mess.
It's a shame this show is splitting these two characters up, because really they're the only two characters that I actually kind of like. Anyway, he leaves, and next we see Lily being driven home by Kenton.
Lily,
I know everything. I had a conversation with the psychiatrist. What? Gave me a clear evaluation that you're highly paranoid and delusional and suffering from severe psychosis. My feeling is you're a high suicide risk, and that puts an obligation on me as a representative of your employer, the duty of care.
No. This is not the way to my apartment.
We're not going to your apartment.
When it becomes clear he's not taking her home, she panics and does this. She gets out and is nearly hit by a CGI car, and then decides to run back down the freeway towards home.
I'm not sure why every single one of these cars stopped here, but all right.
Kenton comes to and realizes Lily got away.
You okay, buddy? Good girl, where did she go?
And he's not too pleased, to say the least.
Fuck.
Later, back at DEVS, Forrest is pouting in the projection room when Katie comes in to talk to him about what happened.
You just fired my most talented engineer. Did you already know you were going to do that?
Did you? Lyndon introduced the multiverse into DEVS. He broke a rule that isn't open to being broken.
Wait, you said before that there are 2 rules.
We have 2 fucking rules, guys. 1, we don't look forwards, we only look back. 2, we don't invade privacy.
Since when is there a 3rd rule about the multiverse? The kid didn't act like he was breaking a rule. He was super surprised you weren't happy about it.
It doesn't seem like this was a clear rule at all.
It works.
It does not work! If it's not our Jesus, it's not my Amaya. And does every hair on her head matter? Yes, it does.
Why the hell is he so angry about this? This is so stupid. Having it be our Jesus would matter if you cared about anything interesting, but all you care about is watching your daughter blow bubbles. What difference does it make if her hair is slightly different if it actually works this way?
And as it turns out, Katie intends to prove that exact point to him by using the kid's audio equations for visuals too.
I took Lyndon's many worlds algorithm for sound waves, and I applied it to light waves.
So Forrest finally gets to see his daughter again in 4K Ultra HD, and he is very emotional about it.
This makes sense. What doesn't make sense is how this is all he cares about.
Later that night, Jamie, who still lives in a world of darkness, is visited through the window once again by Lily.
Without saying a word to him, she calls the police and reports the murder of Sergei.
I'm reporting a crime. Murder. Sergei Pavlov, P-A-V-L-O-V. Lily Chan, C-H-A-N. No, I'm not gonna stay on the line, just send someone. I was wrong. You were right. We need the police.
Sometime later, she's in the bathroom cleaning up when the police arrive. However...
Lily Chan?
Yes.
I'm arresting you for reckless endangerment in the 1st degree while taking control of a vehicle.
You have the right to remain silent. Anything you say can and will be used against you in a court of law.
Excuse me, officer, this is a mistake.
You have the right to an attorney before and after questioning. If not, we will appoint one for you. Do you understand?
No.
Suspect replied no.
Yep.
Turn around and put your hands behind your back where I can see him.
What the fuck is going on?
Okay, let's go.
You have to stop. You don't understand.
Doctor?
NANI? Oh no! That's not how it was supposed to work. It's almost like she didn't think any of this through.
So now Lily is being arrested for nearly killing Kenton and potentially others in that car wreck, which makes sense. And now she's being involuntarily committed because she thought it would be a good idea to pretend to be schizophrenic to her employers, the same employers who she thinks murdered her boyfriend. Because apparently that was the only plan that she could devise to get access to that security footage, to pretend to be schizophrenic.
Do you think they can check?
Feeling stupid?
So she's taken away, at which point Kenton, who is also there for some reason, walks right into Jamie's apartment and just starts choking him out.
I guess the police just thought it would be okay if he came along to arrest her. And I guess no one would have said, hey, what are you doing? You can't just barge in there. So he throws Jamie on the ground or something off screen and then goes to close the curtains, even though he never bothers to close the front door.
And there's the end of episode 4.
Uh-oh, folks. Things are not looking good for our heroes.
How will Lily Chan... I forgot her last name is Chan, Jesus Christ.
On the grounds that she's a danger to herself and a danger to others, we turn her over to involuntary psychiatric hold.
How will Lily Chan get herself out of this mess? Will Jamie Kun survive Kenton-san's wrath? Will the show bother to explain how anything happening at DEVS works or makes any sense? Guess you better stay tuned to find out. Next video coming in
6 to 8 years.
Or something, I don't know. That's all I got for you. That's all I got for you, Jamie. That's all we got.